Well, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm Dee Ellis, Texas Animal Health Commission State Veterinarian and Executive Director. And I want to thank NIAA and USHA for putting this together. I think it's the beginning of, I hope, some valuable dialogue as we move forward between the lab folks and the outreach, agri-life folks, extension folks, and the animal health agencies, and then USDA, I think, is probably going to jump in at some point. I have a feeling. But anyways, I'm glad to be here. What I thought I would do, there's been a lot of discussion this morning about why is this, and I wish they'd do that. And I'm going to tell y'all my perspective. I'm going to tell y'all a story about a man named Jeb, right? Poor mountaineer. Well, that's a different PowerPoint. But anyway, the Texas Trich program, we're in our 5th year, and I think it's actually, so we're not the longest running, we're not the newest one, but we've been in it long enough now that I think it's relevant for me to show y'all how this has evolved. And if there's some state vets or folks out there from the industry in a state that doesn't have one or is in the first stages, I'll share this PowerPoint with you, because we actually have, I believe, a pretty good process of communication between the industry and all the stakeholders. So I'm going to tell you about how it went in Texas, and I think there may be some things we hadn't run across yet, but we've kind of run through some of the major hurdles, and if this will help you guys in any way. So our industry came to us in Texas. It's a voluntary program, so you have to take that basis to start with. We're in a voluntary program. The industry asked the Animal Health Commission to be the police for their deal. They don't want the FBI. They want just like your neighborhood cop that's friendly and reasonable and let you off with a warning sometimes when you get a speeding ticket. So our premise is we're in a voluntary program. Our premise is it's a control program, not an eradication program. I think maybe in 20 years it might be eradication with technology and changes. Right now it's a control program. So you got to go back every time you ask yourself, should we do this or that? If you're in a control program, there will be some risk management rather than risk avoidance activities, and so that kind of drives our decision. You can see here the premises. We started in Texas, control, voluntary. We weren't going to deal with female cattle right off the bat. We wanted our veterinarians to be trained. They're certified to go through a program. We wanted to use official labs. One of the things we specifically avoided, and at the time, Dr. Hillman was the executive director, and he'd been in Idaho, and of course Idaho has a good long-standing program, so he had a lot of background there. And basically we took some of the best practices from the states that were in the program, mainly the western states at that time. And so we put these together, and these were our stakeholders, our Texas Southwestern cattle raisers, our independent cattlemen, our Farm Bureau folks, the Veterinary Medical Association, and some others. And by rule, we created a process where once a year we sit down with these stakeholders and talk about the program, and we have the flexibility to change it. That's a really good thing, to have annual scheduled dialogue so you can work out your differences. These are some of the guys right there, and you see there was Dr. Hillman. This is right before he retired, and we had the first program in 2009, and we did some of the same things the rest of y'all have done. We made a Trich test chart. This is important, and I want to say right off the bat, our working relationship with our lab system is important, because you are full partners in something like this. We made a virgin certificate. We looked at all the ones, and we piecemealed it and came up with some of the regular stuff. So here's what we started with 4 years ago. And I'm going to lead you through to where we're at now so you can maybe understand why we got to where we are and why harmonization may or may not work in all these states. At least in our states, you can understand our position. And I am for harmonization, by the way. And I think we're willing to compromise. So we started off best practices. We just stole stuff from other states. 30-day Trich test, 30-day virgin certificate. And, bulls had to go to slaughter, just the basic stuff, right? We had a permit. We decided, okay, well, if you want to buy an untested bull and you promise to test it, we'll work that out. So we made this form where you can buy an untested bull, not going to slaughter, and you sign a thing that says, I'm going to get this bull tested in 30 days. Kind of easy so far. Infected bulls, we wanted 2 negative tests, 30 days apart. We didn't take pool samples right off the bat. We didn't tell the neighbors. And as I said, it was bulls only, no cows. And it was a reportable disease. And I think that's very important, that you need this to be a reportable disease in your state. It's one of the first things you have to do. For interstate entry, we let virgins come in up to 2 years. They were good for 30 days. We were letting cultures or PCR tests. And exhibition animals that come in, go to a rodeo or a fair or whatever, as long as they'll go home within 60 days, we were waiving that. Otherwise, if they hang around, they've got a test, and they weren't supposed to be running with females while they were here at a rodeo or whatever. One of the things that we forgot about at first, and then we realized in the nick of time was we get breeding animals from both Canada and from Mexico. And there are no international entry requirements for Trich, right? So we had to put a state rule in there, and basically we just say that if you're coming in from Mexico as a breeding animal, the bulls have to be Trich tested, shortly after arrival. I put that in there just so you'd think about this. If you don't have that in there and you ever get a bull from another country, there's no international Trich test requirement unless it's changed. So we made a state rule. So this working group meets every year, right? Well, Dr. Hillman retired, and so you can see up there, I took over, and I should have photoshopped in a different body, but I just put my face up there just so y'all get the point. So this group meets once a year in May, and it's all those same folks. Really, the same guys are there. It's just me and standing up instead of the previous state vet, Dr. Bob Hillman. And so here we were, first time we met. Our program started in January of 2010. We met in May. Every May is when we meet, more or less. And so here's the kind of things we talked about. The first thing we realized, 30 days wasn't long enough for a test chart. If you have a bull sold and the deal falls through, by the time you get another buyer, they're going to have to get another test. And so we made it 60. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it helped the guys in the business. Same with virgins. If they're a virgin for 30 days, why not for 60 days? We did those for consistency. The first week of our program, we realized that it was unreasonable to just say untested bulls have to go to slaughter. Well, what about feedlots? So that was a policy decision I just made on the spur of the moment. An untested bull can go to a feedlot or to a slaughter plant. We went through the rulemaking. And these little red eyes, if you see these little red eyes here, there's a point I'm going to make at the end. That means that you have to have in place an adequate infrastructure with your state animal health agency to do these things. Some of the things we're allowed to do, or we do, it's because we're a big enough state agency that we can manage it. If you're in a state that doesn't have any inspectors, or only 1 or 2 employees, they can't do some of these things. Some of these things, in my opinion, on the honor system would be less effective than in a state like ours where we have 65 inspectors and we can make sure at every market every day that these rules are followed. So keep that in mind. I have an infrastructure in place, and part of the reason I still do is because of the Trich program. This is our friend from a budgetary standpoint and from a public relations with our industries. We've worked very hard to make this a collaborative, cooperative process. They like that. I like that. If I have inspectors do a Trich inspection, the next day they might be doing a TB test or something else. So it's really a win-win for us to have a relationship and sometimes err to the easy side to maintain that relationship. And so I'm going to make that point over and over again. So we set up a system of feedlots, and there's over 100 of them now. And it's not really a feedlot, it's just anybody that says, hey, I want to buy some bulls and feed them. So we have a system, they sign an agreement, they won't break the rules, and occasionally we go by there and check on them. And we permit the bulls out of the markets. I have an inspector at every market. That's a huge thing if you have employees at sale barns. The epi investigations, we decided, well, we're going to do some, little basic epi investigation, look at who the neighbors are, and see if we can start to evaluate the disease spread. You need veterinarians to do that. So we started off in 2010. After just a few months, we decided we're going to tell the neighbors. We're not going to make them do anything, but we believe the neighbors need to be told that their neighbor across the fence has Trich, and they might want to talk to their veterinarian about a test. This cutter bull thing caught me completely by surprise, but there's a number of folks that buy adult bulls, take them to feedlots, and then castrate them. And we completely were caught off guard on that. And after some thinking about it, I just said, all right, I'm not sure I like that really, but if that's what you do, they can go to a feedlot, untested, sexually intact bulls. They go to the feedlot to be castrated upon arrival. And then they're no longer, the Trich program really doesn't affect them after that. We didn't think about cutter bulls. And bison, we had a long discussion about bison and exotic cattle. we just decided to let bison, just leave them alone. They're not worth the trouble. But we did not exempt exotic bovidae or miniatures, because when we started talking to those folks, you could have a miniature cow accidentally bred to a big bull, or a big miniature bull breeding a big cow, and same with yak and some of the water buffaloes and some of those things. We didn't exempt those. We made them test. But we had to talk about it, and we had to do our research with that industry. So the group met again. That was May 2010. We'd only been in business 3 months. When we get to 2011, we'd had a program for a year, and I've got 3 pages of things, not 1 page. We realized it takes you about a year to figure out all the things you forgot to do. Well, the first thing we did, by the next year, we'd had enough of our producers buy virgins from other states that weren't really virgins. They didn't want virgin certificates for out of state. There's no, so we like Texas virgins, but we don't like New Mexico virgins. Tim, sorry about that. There's no logic to this, but if that's what they wanted to do, at the end of the day, it's buyer beware whether you're buying a virgin. If you're buying a virgin, you're taking a risk right off the bat. So we just changed our entry requirements, and we made it so simple. We didn't worry about it. We just said, okay, if the bull's over a year, they need a test. If they're under a year, they don't need a test. It's that simple. We tried to make it simple. Is it right or wrong? Yes and yes. And so I'm just telling you all that was a pragmatic decision, and most of our decisions in this collaborative process when we meet, they're part pragmatism, part collaboration, and part compromise. We just come to some consensus. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, this is a voluntary program, and this is a control program. It makes it a little easier. As a veterinarian, sometimes I wish we would have decided to do something more, but take what you can get. We're going to come back next year and next year and next year. It took 70 years to eradicate TB or brucellosis. It's going to take a while to eradicate Trich, okay? And we're just in our year 4. We decided to let out-of-state bulls go to feedlots. We hadn't thought about that. We were letting our bulls go to feedlots, and so we had to set up a system. Again, you need an infrastructure. We're inspecting feedlots ever so often, and we set it up where if the bull from New Mexico, wanted to go to a quarantine-type feedlot, we'd let them do that. And so we did that for the industry. It's a minor risk, and it was helping their marketability and their profitability. A lot of discussion about, if you use the word what bulls are exempt, sterile is not going to work, because they can be sterile and still be reproductively active. But we did have some teaser bulls and some other little weird niche type things, and so we came up with this definition. If a bull's incapable of breeding, then they don't have to follow the Trich rules, and so we had to change our terminology there. We had a lot of weird off-the-wall people wanting to do research on everything from organic minerals to laser beams and different kinds of things. And so I just went back to the vet school and to our, Dr. Haregrove and some of our experts in extension and different places, said, hey, if I get a weird question that I really don't know the answer, can y'all come help me with this? So we put together a panel of experts. We haven't had to use them since we created it, really, but if I get stumped on something, which is completely possible, I'll collaborate again with our industry and our stakeholders, and we'll make the best decision we can. We decided to make we decided to let infected bulls go through a market. Originally, they were just supposed to go to slaughter. Well, it's not reasonable. Not everyone has access to a slaughter plant. So again, I needed the infrastructure and the market, but we let infected bulls go to a market to be sold for slaughter, and they moved under permit. We didn't allow that at the beginning. We created a certified free herd concept. Again, I need an office infrastructure to manage this. And I don't know if any other states have this. I think somebody does. But we had producers come and say, why don't you develop that? So right or wrong, we started to basically test all your bulls for 3 years. And after the 3rd year, if you haven't had a test positive, then every other year you can test and you can move without testing restrictions. And we also said that the females have to be, any females coming in since you started have to be bred or virgins. And we've got a few herds that have signed up for this. And we also said you can't just sell your bulls at slaughter every year. You got to test them. We don't want you just taking bulls and they disappear, because we want to make sure we had the surveillance. We've got that process. I don't know if any other states are on board with this other than us, but we're just now coming to where we're going to have the first ones able to move. And again, is it perfect? No, but it's a control program. And what can you ask more of someone that they test their bulls every year for 3 years? They should get some kind of credit for that. And so we set that up, and I think it's for a few folks it's going to work. we had to put in a retest time. So we had these quarantine herds, and we realized we didn't tell them there was no endpoint to when they got their second test. We said, you got to have 2 tests. Well, we went and looked, and we forgot to write in it had to be within a certain amount of time. So we had herds that said, yeah, I tested once. I'll do it next year or 2 years. And so we had to go in and add in there, okay, you have to do it, and you have to do it within 60 days. Pool samples, 2011, we started looking, and we went with 1 out of 2. We still weren't sure, but we said, all right, we'll let you use pool samples for one of your 2 releasing tests. You know, we've all got rig ranches, 300, 400, 500 bulls in some places, and so we were trying to help these guys out. So we went and said, well, we'll accept them for 1, but we're not going to let you change ownership with these pool samples. Discrepant PCRs, and there was some discussion earlier about how can you get a false positive. Well, you just can. You know, you can just, it depends on the lab and how many cycles are running. It could be cross-contamination, all kinds of reasons that don't make any sense. But it's just a lot easier to give them a way to retest them. So if we have a positive bull go negative, then we weren't sure, we didn't trust it, so we just made this rule: 2 out of 3. You know, you don't want to call anybody a liar or anything like that, but if you have a positive bull go negative, it doesn't really make sense if it was PCR, other than we know there's some fluctuations in the amount of organisms, and so we just go 2 out of 3. If you test it a 3rd time, it's still negative, we'll take your word for it. If it goes back positive, you've got to get rid of the bull. That's worked very well, but it's important that you have a process to allow a herd owner, whether it makes sense or not, it's not worth fighting them. Give them a process to retest a positive so they feel more comfortable about it. With that said, I would strongly encourage y'all not to worry about that too much. You've got to take the test at face value, especially if you've got 10 positives and there's another one you're not sure about. If you got a bunch of positives or you got a bad reproductive rate in your herd, you've got Trich in there. Quit arguing about 1 or 2 tests and do the right thing. And that's where, as professionals, we can help these guys. But if they want to retest them one time, we'll let them do it. A control herd plan. I'm not sure that we figured this out, and the jury's still out on this. But basically what we had were some really large herds that voluntarily tested for Trich. And again, let's just say 5. We had some with 400 or 500 bulls. So you can figure out how many cows are at. And they said, I don't want to repin these bulls every 60 days. I know I've got it in my females, right? I have Trich. Don't make me keep doing this. Can we just voluntarily enter into like a permanent quarantine? Our bulls will only go to slaughter. We'll test them every year before we turn them out with their cows. And don't make me keep pinning 500 bulls every 60 days because I don't want to do that. And we said, okay. And so what we did, we said, we'll do this under these criteria. You get with your veterinarian and you figure out how to clean Trich up out of your herd by managing your females and all the risks that come into that. And we're going to give you 3 years. And after 3 years, we want you to be releasable. We're just now coming to the first ones, and I imagine there'll be some that are not free of Trich. And I think we're going to talk about this at our next meeting. My opinion is going to be that we make them go ahead and get 2 tests and release them, and if they want to start over next year, they can. But we're not going to let you just be in a quarantine forever. But this was a compromise to allow them. They were voluntarily doing the right thing, but then you turned around and we're costing them a lot of money, and that's where we didn't want the program to be the problem. And if you think about it again, if they're not selling their bulls except to slaughter, there's not a risk other than neighbors, and most of these kind of guys have good fences. So the group met in 2012. We decided by then we kind of liked pool samples, and so we said, all right, we're going to let you use pool samples for change of ownership, and we're going to let you use pool samples for both tests under quarantine. Is it perfect? No. Is it pretty good? Yes. Every test has a problem. Every TB test, colifold test, how good is that test? So when you put it in perspective, it's not perfect, but this helped them save a lot of money. Not only are they saving money with their calf crop by getting rid of Trich, but it saved them a lot of money with lab costs. 80% reduction when you go 5 to 1, and it was important to them, and they are accepting the risk. And if you've got a good herd that's going to test every year anyway, which is what we're trying to encourage before they turn their bulls out, we thought it was fine. We've not had any problems with it, and I think this one thing by itself is the most appreciated thing our industry asked us to do, that we said, fine, go ahead and do it, is because it saves them a lot of money at their lab. This submission time, we went from 96 to 120 hours. And, there's discussion this morning about garbage in, garbage out. My thing here is, so if you had a Monday holiday and you had a guy testing bulls on a Thursday afternoon or a Friday, and he couldn't get, there's times where the vets still could not, with the best of intentions, get them to our lab within 96 hours. So our position here is, okay, labs, show us some scientific data that says 96 is right. There's no consensus on that. So we just added an extra day to help our veterinarians out and to help our clients, the cattle industry out. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. But if they're going to incubate it, they're on the honor system. If they incubate it and you got the DNA and it's in there, does one more day matter? It probably doesn't. And so this is something that we did. Will we change it back? We might. When I start to see peer-reviewed journals and consensus among labs that this is the best hours and times, we'll change it back. But for right now, it's the Wild West anyway. We already talked about every lab's doing it a little bit different. So we did this to help them out, and we had a number of times where a bunch of bulls got tested, and they didn't get there for 120 hours instead of 96, and then what do? You're kind of caught. So we just added it. I did say we're not going any farther than that, but we're going to let this happen. We went through here, and so far, so good. Untested bulls at feedlots. So we decided to let bulls go into a feedlot, and then the intention was that they would go to slaughter, right? Well, then we had the feedlot guys come back and the market owners come back and say, why can't they sell them through a market to go to slaughter? You're hurting the sale barn business. And we were like, well, yeah, okay. We got a guy at the market. We can regulate them by permit. So we said, okay, you can take a bull out of a feedlot and go back to a market. And so then the next thing was, well, you're letting untested bulls at markets be bought by someone who promises to test them. So can these bulls coming from a feedlot be tested instead of going to slaughter? Well, they've been isolated from females. They've been running with bulls. And so we said, yeah, okay, I guess you can do that. And so then they said, well, okay, if the bull can go to the market and be tested, why can't I just test it at the feedlot and sell it to somebody? And again, I have the infrastructure in place in Texas, and we said okay. And so another reason, that gives me another reason to be at a feedlot. I'm looking for dairy ID. I'm looking for TBM brands next to a breeding. There's lots of reasons to be at a feedlot. And so this just, again, validated our need to have a presence, and we compromised. And is it a pain in the rear? A little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. The market owners are happy. The feedlot owners are happy. The cattle industry was happy. And it wasn't that big of a deal. So why did we do that? We did it. That's why we did it. It's a compromise. And positive cows, we didn't have anything about culture positive cows. And so after we realized, well, if a cow's cultured positive for Trich, then that means the herd has Trich. So we went back and passed a rule that says if you have a positive bull, or if you have a culture positive cow, you're under quarantine, you got to test your bulls. So you can see right here, I changed hairdressers. And I think it makes me look a lot better. It makes me look like Matthew McConaughey, actually. So we met again in 2013. We'd gone another year. What did we do? This was one of the most interesting discussions we had. And I will tell you all that a bunch of my staff thought I was crazy for this, and really questioned, what are you guys doing? But what we did was we had some market owners come to us and say, I'm a little bitty market. I only have one slaughter buyer. It's not fair. If I got a bull come in untested, they're not getting full value for that bull because no one can bid against it because there's only one slaughter buyer. Why won't you let me bid on that bull, and I go the next day to another sale and I sell my catches at this market, and you're at the market. You're going to help me make business. You're going to help my clients make more money. And so after a lot of dialogue, my decision here was, in consultation with our stakeholders, this is what we do. This is what an animal health agency does. We've got the system in place to regulate these so they really don't get out of the channels. And if they want to go to another market, I've got a guy at the market the next day. So we've come up with this plan, and I put 3 eyes there because you really need infrastructure here. We created a permit, and so when an untested bull comes through a market now in Texas, adult bull, and a known slaughter buyer doesn't buy it, instead of the Cavness Pack guy buying it or Lone Star or whatever, if, say, Joe Blow buys it, our inspector walks over there and says, where are you going with that bull? And he says, well, I'm going to resell it tomorrow at Dalhart, or I think I'm going to test it, but I'm not sure. We give them 7 days. If you think about it, these buyers come back to these same markets. They're there every week. So we issue them a permit. They have to tell us where they're taking it. I'm taking it to my house, or I'm taking it to another sale barn. A lot of these kind of bulls are bucking bulls. They're trying to see if they'll buck. They take them home, and if they don't buck, they just bring them back. But there is a value to that bull, and so we set this system up. It's a little bit of a pain for us because now we have to watch the bulls sell, and we have to write down where they're going. And if a non-slaughter buyer buys them, we go ask them, and we give them a permit, and we follow up on it. But it's the honor system. Guys, any regulatory program will not work without the full support of the industry, and our cattle industry supports this program, and so we've really not had a lot of trouble with it. The market owners were happy. The cattle industry was happy. My guys were not happy, but at the end of the day, it wasn't that big of a deal, and they got over it. So this is something I don't know anyone else doing it. We're giving you a week to figure it out. What do you want to do with it? And these are market bulls for the most part. And there's bull stations. If some of y'all got bull stations, they go in there, like maybe go to Louisiana to a bull station when they're a virgin, but when they come back, they're over 12 months of age and they've been in this bull station. So we set up a system where bulls coming out of a bull station, we're not going to make them test to come home, and it's low risk. We also then decided to let Oklahoma reactor bulls come to Texas. We tried not to do that much, Rod, but we have a lot of bulls that come into our markets from other states, and so under VS 127 permit, we'll let reactor bulls come to our markets, and our inspectors there, and then they permit them on to slaughter. And so we decided to let that. And then commuter herd plans, that's we hadn't thought about it. We've had some people ask about that. So we're to the end of the story here. We've got our next meeting in Texas coming up in 2 weeks. What are we going to talk about? What I do is I ask all the veterinarians, all the cattle industries, my employees, send me all the ideas you have for discussion topics. I'll run through them right here. And I've got in parentheses whether I think it's going to happen or not this year in Texas. More aggressive tracing. I believe this is going to finally pass. And here's what we're at right now. Our guys the cattle industry appreciates a voluntary program. They've been very reluctant to get more regulatory, although, it's probably time. So we have a situation here. If you sell a bull and you don't have it tested, which means you don't care, or he jumps or he fights or he's sterile. But if someone else wants to buy him, take that bull home and test him, and it was Trich positive, we were not making that original seller test his bulls because the industry thought, well, he's lost control of it. It's been at somebody else's house, and it's not really fair. You don't know what happened, although our permit system says you will not put this bull with females, and you got to get it done pretty quick. I think we're finally this year going to come to the point where our cattle industry guys will say, yeah, if that guy sold a bull at the sale barn and it got tested 3 days later and it's positive, put him under quarantine and make him test. I think we're finally going to get that done. It's basic common sense from an epidemiological and a regulatory practice, but we haven't done it yet, and that's one of the things that, I've been a little frustrated, and I know our veterinary industry in Texas is like, why are you being so nice to these guys? I think the time has come where they actually will acknowledge that we need to do this. Strays, if the neighbor's bull gets into your pasture and you go have it tested for Trich and it's positive, you just got quarantined, but we weren't quarantining the neighbor. Same reason, because their position was, well, maybe that guy's bull caught it from your cows. It could have happened. I don't think they're going to go for this, but I'm going to bring it up again. I'll keep bringing it up every year, and some year they'll say, yeah, we got to do something with neighbors. I don't think that'll happen yet this year. Same with fence line adjacents. I don't think we're quite ready to make them test. But I think that day, if you ever move beyond an easy control to a more stringent control, you're going to have to do that. And I hope we do. But no age limit. I got this idea from Dusty in South Dakota. I mean, why do we have it? If the guy says it's a virgin, you're either believing him or you're not to start with. So why do we have these weird, why does it matter? It's either a virgin or it's not. I don't think we're going to do anything about it, but it's an interesting concept, and I'm going to throw it out there. What does it matter if it's 19 months or 17 months? The guy's either telling the truth or he's not, right? It could be a 7-year-old bull. If he's a virgin, he's not going to spread Trich. So I think we're going to at least start to talk about thinking through this. What does the age matter, really? Trich tubes, we're not ready for those yet because there's still a lot of discussions to be had. But I look forward to this, and there's people who love them, people who hate them, and we're just not. I don't have any way to assess this, but I think we have to all start talking about it. And the others, you can see they're certified free herds. Pool samples. So let's talk about where we're here. I'm at the last couple of slides. Harmonization. How are we going to harmonize? Well, is Texas in compliance with the basic tenets of harmonization, which are these 4 things? Do we accept pool samples? Yes. We didn't at first, but we realized it's really okay. You're accepting risk. It's not an eradication program. It helps your industry. I think we should accept pool samples in the lab. I think it's a reasonable compromise. And yeah, you are probably giving up a little bit of sensitivity, but every test has its flaws. That's my position. 60-day test, we did it. 30 days wasn't long enough for your test chart to expire. It wasn't long enough. They might not get the results back for 10 days, and then if they don't have a seller, it expires. PCR cultures, we changed our entry requirements to be simple. We just quit messing with cultures from other states, and the reason we did that was not very many people did it to start with, and we were all a little uncomfortable allowing private practitioners in another state to run a regulatory test and send the bulls to us. We don't let that in Texas. We just said the official labs are the only ones who can run these tests. And so I'm even more uncomfortable accepting a regulatory validated test from a vet who might have a reputation for getting negative tests in another state. We changed to PCR only. Virgins, I already told you the story. We decided it wasn't worth the trouble. We can go back. If it's obvious to me, in my opinion, that all the United States wants to get on board with something, these are not that big of a deal to us. Pool samples are a big deal, 60-day tests a big deal, but I would tell you that I think the Texas industry would go back and allow these if it's obvious that that's what everyone wants to. I don't mind helping change that. I don't want to change it back and then it all falls apart, and that's my only concern is that if we're going to harmonize, let's really harmonize, and these were the 4 things you're going to hear about. I put this picture in here. These guys on the left, Dr. Hairgrove's here, these are our vets, and I'll just tell y'all, our veterinarian industry is a little frustrated that we're going too slow, and I don't blame them. But you go back to pragmatism, politics, compromise. This is a win-win what we're doing right now. If your industry's happy with you, they're making money, you're helping them as a vet professional, you're helping them with their marketability. We can afford to go slowly and do the right thing. But I am aware, and I do recognize that veterinarians in Texas wish we were doing more sooner, and they're right. They are absolutely right, and maybe eventually we'll get there. Female cattle, that's the 800-pound gorilla. We're all going to have to eventually do something. Texas is not going to do anything with this right now. There's too many of them. I don't have any way. Even with my infrastructure, I can't deal with it. But I hope that we can continue to look for new tests and new technology and maybe come up with some better ideas. And in the meantime, outreach education is the way to go there. And so where are we at now in Texas? We'll let a bull go to a feedlot, to a slaughter, be resold through a market, or to be tested in 7 days of change of ownership and 60-day tests and 60-day virgins. As I said, we like Texas virgins. Interstate, right now we only let PCR be the test. We'll let it be good for 60 days. 12 months and up have to test. Under 12 don't. Exhibitions can come in. And do keep in mind that for some of the southeastern states, we have a lot of Brahma influence there, and those bulls mature later in life than an Angus bull or a Jersey bull. And that's why our virgins, we'll let them sell up to 30 months with a vet co-signing the health certificate with the virgin certificate with the owner, because a lot of those, registered Brahma, they may be 2 years old. They're definitely virgins, but they're just now ready to be turned out. And so some of our beef industry practices ask us to go to 30 months. So where are we at? I think you've got to have industry support to be successful. It's working great in Texas. And you've got to have an adequate infrastructure. You've got to be at markets, feedlots, special sales, and occasionally stopping someone asking for their papers. You have to do that. So as I wrap up here, I'll say, how's it working in Texas as we enter our 5th year? Our Trich program, based upon compromise, I don't think we're compromising our professional ethics, because most of this is still, there's no black and white, it's still gray. It depends on who you talk to. As those black and white things come, then we'll be more insistent that we adopt those practices, especially with lab stuff. It's helped our industry make money. It's helped me maintain an adequate workforce so I can do other disease programs. It's strengthened our working relationship with our markets and our cattle industry, which I think is critical. You have to have that. And it's helped our veterinarians in mixed practice as well. So I don't know what's next. I think we all just have to be open-minded, and we need to be prepared to change and consider thinking outside the box. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We're in the 1st or 2nd inning of a 9-inning game here, and so I think we just need to be patient. That's our perspective from Texas, and right or wrong, that's what we're doing. But I think we're pretty much, if your industry's happy and you're helping with the disease and you're helping to make money and you're on the right track, I think we're okay, and that's our story.